Ready? Okay. Good evening. This is the meeting of the Board of Directors, Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. It's our regular board meeting, Thursday, March 9th, 2023, at 6 p.m. Starting at 6 p.m. Call this meeting to order. Board Clerk, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'll begin with Director Sailors.
Here.
Weber.
Present.
Director Sheets is absent this evening. Director Gould.
Present.
Wood.
Here.
Director Rice is also absent this evening. Director Jones.
Here.
Costa.
Here.
And President Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Turning it back over to you.
All right. Next thing on the agenda is the pledge to our flag. Director Gould, would you lead us in the pledge?
Be delighted. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Gould. All right. This is a Metro Cable announcement. This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District will be telecast on Metro Cable 14. The local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse cable systems. The meeting also is webcast at Metro 14 Live, saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays on Saturday, March 11th at 2 p.m. and Monday, March 13th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. The meeting could also be viewed at your at YouTube.com/Metro Cable 14. Next is a public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within our district jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
We do not have any speakers with us in person, and Art, if you could allow our virtual audience, if they would like to speak, to unmute.
Hello attendees, you now have the ability to unmute if there's anything you'd like to present to the board at this time.
Okay. All right. Before we do the consent items and the rest of the agenda, I want to announce that we will be changing the order of our action items, and we'll take item number 2 first, as it needs to be heard prior to the mid-year budget. So next we'll go to consent items. All the board members had a chance to look at the consent agenda?
Yep.
All right. No questions? Do we have any questions?
No.
All right. I need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
I'll second.
Director Jones moved and Director Wood second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Director Sailors.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Right. We'll go next to the presentation items. The first on the agenda is 10 years of service to Director Wood.
Here.
Chief.
Thank you. President Clark, if I could ask you and Director Wood to join me in front of the dais.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to invite his wife Susan to join us.
Man.
as well.
This seems like it was just yesterday. Time flies. All right, okay.
Do we have one? She needs one too. Oh, you'll get yours later.
Oh. So, Director Wood, we would just like to thank you for your 10 years of service. I just did some rough calculations and I figured that's about 240 board meetings plus committee meetings at 3 to 5 hours a meeting. I lost track. So thank you for your leadership on this board, for directing the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District, and for your friendship since I've come here today. And I love the collaboration that you bring to the board and ideation. I'm always looking forward. So thank you for that. And so we have a 10-year pin here for you.
Yeah.
Let's, go for it.
Are you good today?
Just like some wine.
There you go.
Speech.
That deserves a kiss.
Some stranger.
Congratulations. All right, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
That's one.
Nice.
All right. Next is a presentation of the MIH program update, and that would be Battalion Chief Perryman.
Excellent.
Good evening, President, Board of Directors, Chief. Thank you all very much for having me here tonight. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the Mobile Integrated Health Program and the one-year overview and kind of where we're at. See, I'm going to talk a little fast because I've got to get all the information into a very short amount of time for your sakes, for Melissa's sake, and obviously the audience's sake. So I will try to make it rather brief. You as the board approved of the Mobile Integrated Health Pilot on September 23rd, 2021. It was shortly thereafter that we actually started movement, and the program started November 15th of 2021. Now, a little reminder is that the funding of this program was supported by UC Davis, Sutter, and Dignity Health. That really helped us launch, because what it did is the program that we wanted to do was we wanted to deal with the high utilizers of the 911 system. We wanted to deal with the low acuity 911 side, and we also wanted to deal with some of the mental health issues that we were seeing. Now, the overall objective of this, the goal was to keep our engines, our medics, and our trucks available to respond to those critical emergencies. The second thing is that we didn't want to have the only solution for everybody calling 911 and having a medical emergency, their only solution being the emergency room. That wasn't the appropriate manner. The third objective was to have a reduction in the healthcare expenditures. Healthcare is really expensive. We need to do something about it. And so I want to tell you a little bit about it. We started off with the best foundation that we have, and that was amazing firefighter paramedics. And so we started off with those amazing firefighter paramedics, and I want to mention them by name because they were fantastic. We started off with firefighter Danny Belashki, Christy Rivera, Josh Katz, and Michael Skaggs. And now you're wondering about our providers. Who did Metro Fire bring in as our nurse practitioners and physician assistants to deal with these high utilizers of 911, the low acuity 911 calls, and the psychiatric emergencies? Well, you're about ready to see.
I am Larry Gomez, nurse practitioner. I work in the ER at UC Davis, and I've been there for 2 years. Prior to coming to Sacramento, I worked for the Houston Fire Department for 23 years. I was a captain for 12 of those, and 6 of those I was an EMS supervisor. I was an ER nurse for 15 years before going to nurse practitioner school, and I'm happy to be here.
Hey, my name is Diane Shandies, and I've got a pretty extensive history with EMS. My last job, I was teaching at Sacramento State University as their AMP instructor. Prior to that, I did three and a half years at Sutter ED downtown. My background also includes being a private medic for AMR. I worked for CAL FIRE as a firefighter paramedic, both on an ambulance and an engine, and I did some medical simulation education thrown in there as well. And I'm really excited for this program because it gets to marry two things I love, pre-hospital and clinical medicine.
My name is Ketty Sloan. I'm a nurse practitioner at UC Davis. I work on the burn unit. I've been a nurse practitioner since 2015. I've always worked in burn. I'm actually not from here. I worked in Colorado, Iowa before this, but I'm a Yankee. I'm from the East Coast. I also do a lot of work with the American Burn Association and help develop operating guidelines for firefighters. So excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanisha McFadden. I'm an ERPA who's been working at Sutter Sacramento and been working in Sacramento for the last 3 years. Prior to becoming an ERPA, I was an EMT in the field in Seattle, Washington since 2009, and I also used to volunteer as a firefighter in Tacoma, Washington. I really miss pre-hospital medicine, and I'm excited to get back out in the field.
So that was a very brief introduction of the amazing advanced providers and paired them up with our great firefighter paramedics. That team was unstoppable, but we needed a leader, and that's where Dr. Mackey came in and was our medical director. You know that Dr. Mackey he moved on to other pastures, so we needed a new medical director, and that's where Dr. Alex Schmaltz has come in. He's our medical director for Metro Fire, and now he's also our medical director for the Mobile Integrated Health Program. So we have great individuals. The things that you want to know right off the bat is you want to know the numbers. That's why you're here. I'll give you the numbers. But the numbers are really difficult because sometimes they just don't share all the picture that we have. You want to know some of the big numbers. We had a total of 754 total MIH interactions. What that means is we had incidents. What is an incident? An incident is where we showed up on scene, we did a patient care report, we prescribed medication, we did a procedure, we did something significant. It wasn't just a, hi, how are you doing? There was something significant to it. There was a lot of things behind the scenes that people didn't know about. All the subsequent phone calls to doctors' offices, other family members, pharmacies, social services, all the things to get individuals what they need. We didn't start counting emails until the very end, but we sent out a lot of emails to different entities trying to make progress happen. Now, when we started the program, it was only dealing with the high 911 utilizers. We were not allowed in the 911 system till the very end of the program. So right here, you see that pre-MIH, there was 652 calls. After, there's 368. That was a 43.6% reduction in some of the highest utilizers of 911. The challenging patients that people just show, they just don't know what to do with. A lot of these patients already had care plans in place and they failed, and we were very successful. This is a very conservative estimate because this counts those who said, you know what, we're not really interested in your service, and they still called 911. We also excluded the individuals that moved, went into nursing homes, or became deceased. Now looking at the 911 system, there's only 20 calls. I'm not here to lie. We only had 20 911 calls. That's because we were not allowed in the 911 system until the very end of the program. We wanted to work very closely with the Sacramento LIMSA, and we wanted to make sure that they were comfortable and everything was in place. So we were only allowed in the system at the very end. And at the very end, we had an 85% treat and release on scene. And that caused a reduction. Some people can look at it different ways. We like to look at it, that was a cost savings of over $1 million. And so what do you say to that? Well, I think that we're just getting started. I really do. But I want to break down those numbers for you just a little bit more. So when people call 911, not everybody goes to the hospital. Some are just assessments and then they stay on scene. Well, we were showing that we were able to still reduce those assessments by 46%. Those that were transported, we still reduced those by 41%. And then total of the high 911 utilizers, that 43.6%. And then again, those 911 calls, 85%. I expect that 85% is actually on the high side, to be honest. Looking at all the other data from around the nation, I'm guessing that we're probably going to normalize fairly soon and see that the treat and release on scene rate is going to be somewhere around the 60 to 70%. And we're getting pretty darn close to that. So those are some of the numbers, but now you want to know about some other stuff. And what that is you want me to show you the money. What did this cost and where did those cost savings come from? So let me break down some of the money. And I apologize that the slide doesn't bring up, it's kind of hard to see on some of the cost savings. What we were able to do is we knew what the BLS transport was going to be, and we knew what the cost, the basic cost of an emergency room visit was going to be. That's around $5,500 for the transport and the emergency room visit for some of the lowest things, considering a medication refill. My toe hurts, a sore throat, a urinary tract infection, $5,500, just the minimum. We were able to see that cost savings difference of $988,000. And I was not satisfied because I wanted $1 million savings, because that sounds so much better. And then I realized, oh, that's right. There's more. I forgot about those 911 calls. And those 911 calls, we were able to show the cost savings of $94,000. So when you add those two together, we had that savings of over $1 million, and now I was happy. Considering that the hospital systems gave us that $1.1 million to fund the program for 1 year, we have been able to stretch it almost 17 months, where we have not impacted Metro Fire's budget. So when we thought it was only going to last a year, we're stretching it out almost to a year and a half. We know what the system costs now. We've been very frugal with our money. We've been very responsive to the needs of the program and make sure that we're doing it in a good way with taxpayer money. More importantly, the money that came from the health systems that gave us this money in good earnestness. Some of the things that I want to tell about, this is the most important part that I want to tell you about. These calls happened in your area. And afterwards, I'm more than happy to tell you where each one of these calls happened as far as whose division this happened in. The first one I want to tell you about is a high 911 utilizer who called a lot. I mean, he called a lot. The engine crew reached out to us and said, please, you've got to do something. He had over 30 911 calls in a 6-month period. He had severe diabetic issues. He also had some cognitive issues. And you can imagine having diabetic issues, cognitive issues, and some sight issues. He kept on mixing up his insulin. Was it fast-acting insulin or short-acting insulin? He didn't know, so he just gave himself insulin. So he had a lot of diabetic issues. We worked with him and found out, oh, he's colorblind and he can't tell the difference between the two medications. We were able to educate him. We were able to show him the different medications. And now the engine crew is incredibly happy. The patient is incredibly happy. And the emergency room is not seeing this patient for a diabetic issue. Okay, it's now resolved, send him home. We found the gap and we fixed it. Another call. When you have a psychiatric issue and it's a severe one, I want you don't have a driver's license, you have to take a bus. And then you have to get to the doctor's appointment at the specific time. And if you don't, you have to make another appointment. And make sure you take your medication on time. It's very challenging for these individuals. We were able to bring medication to the patient and give them the injection in their home to help them get on track and see their 911 use plummet to where they haven't called in over 6 months because we're simply able to get them on track. The emergency rooms can't do that. Mobile Integrated Health was able to do that. Another call was about an anxiety patient. This person called 911, our engine responded, our medic responded. Mobile Integrated Health was there. We were able to help him with his anxiety, release the engine right away, and the medic. That medic came from 101's first in area, which is roughly at Highway 80 in Fulton, all the way to kind of around the 42's first in area. So we're looking at Watt and Greenback or Elkhorn. As soon as we released that medic, they responded back to their first in for a stabbing. If we did not release them, the next in medic would have been how much farther away. We were able to treat that patient with anxiety in his home, get him scheduled for primary care within the next week. So it saved the 911 system, saved the emergency room, saved the patient thousands of dollars, and kept that critical ambulance in the system. Another one I want to talk about is one that's a little near and dear to my heart. It was another 911 call. This gentleman was on hospice. He was at end-stage prostate cancer. He had been helping himself with a Foley catheter. He had gotten so weak that he was unable to do it himself any further, and his family was in town to help him out at the end stages of life. He was so weak that he couldn't even do the Foley catheter. His family had no idea what to do. They called his hospice center. They were not able to get to him for at least 6 to 12 hours. He had no idea what to do, so they called 911. The engine crew got there and they said, we have a solution for you. They called Mobile Integrated Health. We got there. We released the engine and the medic right away. We were able to do a little dignity and keep him in his home, not have him transported to the emergency room where he would have sat on the wall for hours and then transported back to the hospital, back to his house. We're able to treat him in his house, change him, get him in some nice clean clothes, teach his family about the things that they needed, and just give him a little bit of care and know that Metro Fire takes care of their folks. I can tell you hundreds of stories like that. And I am proud of what Metro Fire has done. Metro Fire has Mobile Integrated Health, and this program fills in the gaps because there are thousands of gaps. They don't necessarily need the emergency room, but they do need help. And so what does that future look like without this? It's not a pretty one. Everybody knows that this is the way of the future. We have some great, great potential, but due to time, I'm not going to spend all that time. I'm taking too much time as it is, but there's so many people I want to thank because there's no way we could have gotten here by ourselves. We've had great leadership, some great individuals who've helped make this program successful. I forgot to mention that Captain Adam Spiva filled in for me when I became Battalion Chief Scott Perryman. Captain Spiva did an amazing job. It shows that this program isn't a Perryman thing or just a Metro thing. It is something that will be successful. I'd like to turn the time over to Chief Haverty, and then I'm ready for your guys' questions. Chief Haverty?
Thanks, Chief. You know, as you can see, what makes this program work and get off the ground is Chief Perryman's ingenuity and his passion, his commitment to the patient. And in doing so, he brings, I think we're watching him and his providers and all those that support him redefine how not only Metro Fire, but how the fire service approaches its multi-hazard approach to solving problems. And this is just one way that it's being done here at Metro Fire. But the chief invited me on a ride along. And so I spent 3 or 4 hours with him. It cost me a lunch, but that was no big deal. But he had a chance to show me and take me on 3 return calls. He went to one in your district, sir, and took out stitches in a woman who couldn't speak English, an East Indian woman. And luckily her daughter was there and she was able to bridge the gap with the language, but treated it on scene a week or so before and returned to give follow-up care. And they were just so delighted with him and with the service that they got from Metro Fire. Took me to another call, was a return visit for 2 COVID patients, and went in, checked on the wife and gave her care. And what I was so impressed with is his ability to kind of peel the onion back and get to some root cause analysis as to what is really causing the problem here. And he did that. He did that in such a compassionate way. And I believe that all of the providers followed his lead in terms of giving of themselves selflessly to the patients that they serve. When we talk about wall time in the fire department, it's a big problem that we're trying to work on. But doing things on the front end of reducing the calls into the emergency department is going to affect wall time, I believe, reducing it because we're reducing that front end load into the hospital. And MIH is something that I believe needs to be expanded, not only here, but in the other adjoining districts and departments that we have in this county and well beyond, which it is. So it's my congratulations to Chief Perryman and his staff, his crew over there. They do a fantastic job. They are leading the way of the fire service in a way that I certainly never imagined years ago. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Chief, what an innovative and great way to use of resources. I think that the district, I mean, this is just amazing. I could imagine every district wants to use, every fire district would want to use this program. Thank you so much. It's just an amazing way of taking care of our community.
Thank you, Director. I know that there's people online who are listening to this right now and want to know your thoughts and your support And so I'm ready for your questions, and I know that
Absolutely.
some of those folks are ready for your support or your input.
We have questions, directors? Yes, Director.
I do have a question. So you've talked about the program and you talked about like the future state. So what is the future state? Like what's year 2?
I'm glad you asked. Year 1 of funding was donated graciously by those 3 health systems. That funding is quickly running out. We're looking for every source of funding to where we can be able to, the future is we need to be able to bill for these services.
Right.
And that's what we're looking at. So the first thing is we couldn't bill for the first year of service. You gave me $1 million. Now I come back and I say, and here's your bill for the treatment that we gave to this patient. So now what we need is we need a little bit of time so that way we can understand the billing cycle, how to bill, how much to bill, and how much to bill to sustain the program. That's where we're in right now. And we're in that vital stage of where we need just a little bit of pop-up before we can take off. The other surrounding agencies are saying, yes, do this, please, because then we can follow you. There's a lot of eyes on us, and that's where we're at. Right now, we need a little bit of propping up. We're going to the county, we're going to healthcare organizations, we're going to grants. We're going to look at everything we can so we can just get over that hump until we can actually get a sustainable model going.
So beginning Monday, Chief Perriman is going to join me for one-on-one meetings with all of the hospital administrators. And Monday, we meet with the Chief Operating Officer at Kaiser.
Fantastic.
So there'll be another 5 or 8 follow that.
Director Boo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, congratulations. I mean, obviously, you're so humble that it's not a Perryman. Well, I'm here to argue that without your passion, it seems like 100 years ago, we would have never got off. And I think off the starting line. And I think that all of us recognize that it was you that was going to really lead that charge. And so you deserve a lot of the kudos that are coming out, because without your leadership, and I know hundreds of hours that were not compensated, this would have never been where it's at now. Your salesman skills are off the chart. And so I'm sure that worked with our CEOs to show that. But more importantly, so a couple of things. How does one become a 911 high user? What criteria are you using for that?
So we made it loose. We looked at those who had called 911 10 or more times in a calendar year. That was where we started. But we also realized we found a lot of gaps. What I mean by those gaps is we got referrals from our engine crews and our stations. We said, please call us in and let us know. And they would say, this person has been calling so much, they call every day. And then we'd actually look at the data. Sometimes we found out that, no, they didn't call as often as you thought. But interesting thing we found is we found a lot of individuals fall a lot of falls that don't actually generate a PCR and don't show up on the high 911 utilizer unit list, but their falls actually equated for a lot of 911 use that we never anticipated.
Do you see the future of that becoming automated in our CAD?
You mean the MIH and?
Yeah, where the individual's calls are tracked to a degree where then MIH is notified that you now have a new candidate for high user, then the companies can know that in the field and be aware of that. Do you see that coming down the road pretty quickly?
Absolutely. The future is bright, and that's one of those bright spots.
And it also, one last thing, it also seems to me like we have some well-connected individuals in this community to the state, where I think really we really need to, I think, look beyond the county. I think we sit in those assembly members' rooms and we start talking about at that scale, because I'm glad that we're, have the opportunity to prop this up for a while, but frankly, this is a responsibility of our state government to take care of the individuals that you're describing. And that money needs to be peeled off, and the benefit will obviously go to all of us, the hospitals, the men and women working in the field. So kudos to you, and if that embarrasses you, so what? But really, we prop up it by financials, but we realize that without your individual leadership, we'd be still behind the power curve a little bit. Are you starting to see fire agencies coalesce around an association of fire departments that are doing MIH?
There's actually a meeting coming up in May where all of California, those who have programs or are interested in programs, are meeting up.
How many would you project have active programs?
5.
5. Wow, that's a small number given the size of our state. So you'll be a leader in that regard as well. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any, Director Wood?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Director Gold said. Having sat with you in DC and various representatives and senators' offices, this program wouldn't be here without your work, as well as your staff, but you are far too modest with yourself. One of the comments, one of the things that we learned back, I think in 17 when we were back there, was there's a Medicare code for treat but not transport that was never, as I understand it, was never activated. Has that ever been addressed?
There's lots of things that still need to be addressed.
It's on the radar. Okay.
Director Jones, did you?
Actually, it was Director Costa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I just wanted to circle back to the earlier question. So you're going to take some time to evaluate and look at options for funding, but how are we going to fund that gap time?
That's where we're reaching out to the county. We're
Okay.
hoping to have some answers in the next week or two. And then we're also reaching out to the health systems
Okay,
to help out as well.
great. So at that time though, will you come back to the board? Because sounds like, this is a fantastic program and we don't want to miss opportunities. So if we're not going anywhere with that, I think we need to come back to the board and seek some assistance and or direction, right? So, I think seems like we're very supportive here as a board. I don't want to speak for everybody, but
You mentioned.
so, yeah,
Director Costa, I'd follow up too. I think that if we are faced with the reality of needing to do some bridge money,
yes,
think about the impact it's having on our men and women who aren't running those calls every day and what that will cost us long term.
right.
So I would just say that if this is showing benefit to the men and women who are working those 48-hour shifts and it drops that volume down because we do have this, I think that's a winner already that we have to look at from a financial standpoint, because I don't want to pay, I'd rather pay now and keep that down than pay 15 years from now when all of a sudden we've burned out a cadre of individuals
Right.
that go on those EMS calls.
Yeah.
Director Jones.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Chief, if there's any phone call or meeting that you think any of us directors can assist with, help, influence, beg, borrow, steal, whatever, please just pick up the phone and contact us, or email us, whatever. So that in all different levels, financial, political, personal, we'd be glad to support this in any way we can.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that for sure.
Sounds like you got full board support on that. Thank you so much. That's a great presentation.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, next presentation is capital improvement plan update. Aaron Castleberry, who is our administrative analyst, and Jeff Fry, Chief Economic Development Officer.
Thank you, President Clark, and good evening, directors. I'm just here to do a quick introduction to version 2, the capital improvement plan. If you recall, this was an entire element in the board strategic plan from 2020. Obviously, last year was our an inaugural attempt at this, so we have a lot of revisions to it. I think you're going to like them. 2 things out of that I want to mention. The board last year asked for an earlier presentation on this, which is just kind of a fact finding to see, to get the information, have some time to absorb it ahead of a budget, before the budget comes to you. So that's what this presentation is today. And then I'm really excited for you to see Aaron's presentation, because you can see the improvements we've made over the last year. So with that, I will turn it over to Aaron.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Ms.
Jeff.
Castleberry.
Good evening, President Clark, board members, Chief Haverty, everyone else in the audience. Tonight, I'm happy to provide an update on our capital improvement program, which, as Jeff mentioned, was authorized by the board for the first time last year with the first approval of our capital improvement program policy and then subsequent adoption of the first fiscal year 22-23 capital improvement plan. Since several of you are new to the board this year, I just want to give a brief overview of the purpose of the CIP and how it fits into the district's strategic plan. So the purpose of the CIP is to organize, facilitate, and memorialize the capital needs and goals in order to efficiently and transparently develop and support the physical infrastructure of the district. So how do we do this? It's twofold. First, we identify the district's capital needs that are required to support the district's mission. These needs include facilities, infrastructure, apparatus, equipment, and personal protective equipment. And then we plan for the funding of these capital projects to ensure that existing and future capital needs are met in accordance with the district's strategic plan. So by identifying these needs and planning for the funding, we integrate both the capital asset and financial management elements of the board's strategic plan from 2020. This is sort of a refresher on how the CIP process works. It's a coordinated planning effort across multiple divisions, with the capital project planning process managed by the Planning and Development Division and the Finance and Budget process managed by the Finance Division. The identification of the needs first begins at the divisional level. Each division is tasked with submitting capital projects based on existing and future needs in alignment with the district's strategic planning documents, including capital asset replacement schedules, facility condition assessments, standards of cover, and the growth plan. These identified needs are submitted as projects to the Planning and Development Division, where they are validated and then compiled into a one-year request, as well as a 5-year projection. The CIP committee then reviews the one-year request and ranks these projects in order based on their alignment with strategic plans, statutory and regulatory considerations, impact on service delivery, secondary financial impacts, management and workload implications, and the impacts on constituents and stakeholders, of course. After the projects are ranked, Finance Division then develops a draft funding recommendation, which is reviewed and adjusted by the executive team as part of the preliminary budget process. The finalized plan is then presented to the board for approval alongside the preliminary budget in June. So last year, there were 20 projects that were authorized with a total cost of $41.9 million for full project completion. $15.7 million in apparatus and equipment projects were funded with bank financing. $1.5 million was funded by the general operating budget. Approximately $500,000 was funded by lease revenue. 11.1 million is being funded by a combination of development impact fees and bond proceeds. And most recently, 13 million is being funded through a state budget allocation for the Zimpinville project. I'm happy to report that all 20 projects were initiated in fiscal year 22-23. 11 of those are either already complete or anticipated for completion by the end of the fiscal year. And there are 9 projects that will be carrying forward to the next fiscal year due to either being a multi-year project or because of supply chain issues. That's mostly in our apparatus and equipment category. So moving into the new fiscal year, we received 43 new project submissions totaling 54.4 million. This is the breakdown of the percentage of requests. 24 apparatus and equipment requests, 7 facilities repair and replacement requests, 8 miscellaneous projects, 1 new construction project, and 3 PPE projects. Apparatus and equipment projects make up the largest portion of the requested funding at 24.7 million, or 46% of the total request. Of the 24.7 million requested, 15.1 is requested for apparatus and vehicles, including engines, trucks, and ambulances, staff and command vehicles, special operations apparatus, and other support vehicles. The remaining 9.6 million is requested for 14 acquisition and replacement of equipment projects, including server and networking equipment, communications and radio equipment, air operations equipment, EMS equipment, suppression equipment, and hazmat equipment. Facilities repair and replacement projects make up 23% of the total requested funding. A total of 12.6 million was requested for 7 facility repair and replacement projects, including deferred maintenance and repair projects, roof replacement, flooring replacement, and a couple of frontage improvement repairs at a couple of our stations. There was only one new construction project submitted for this year totaling 12 million for the relocation of Station 42. This represents 22% of the total requested funding. Miscellaneous projects represent 7% of the funding request, with 8 miscellaneous projects totaling 3.9 million submitted for consideration this year. These include station security upgrades, generators, technology upgrades, and other building type of improvements that are not considered new construction. Personal protective equipment projects make up the smallest portion of the total funding at 2%. And submitted projects are just under $1 million, including structural turnout replacement, wildland PPE replacement, and PPE for our recruit academy. So here you can see the comparison between last year's project requests and this year's project requests. Overall, there were 11 less requests submitted this year than as compared to last year. While there was an increase in the number of apparatus and equipment requests, there were reductions in all other project types with the exception of PPE, which remained the same as last year. Similarly, the funding this year, the funding request significantly decreased as compared to last year. There was a small reduction in the amount of funding requested for apparatus and equipment projects, and a small increase in the funding requested for facilities repair and replacement projects. No funding was requested for new land acquisition projects for the coming year. So the largest reduction you're going to see is reflected in the new construction and miscellaneous project categories. Several projects that were submitted last year but not selected for funding were not resubmitted this year for consideration. This is because most of these projects needed additional study to confirm scope because they're directly tied to our standards of cover update that's currently under development. So while this year does show a reduction in needs, we anticipate that several of these projects are going to be resubmitted next year to address forthcoming recommendations in the standards of cover. So as you know, the CIP is made up of both a one-year capital outlay plan as well as a 5-year projection of capital needs. So based on the information submitted this year, the projected 5-year capital need is nearly 200 million. And you can see here the breakdown of each category. So what comes next? The CIP committee met last week and ranked all of the submitted projects for this year and sent that list over to finance. So finance is now working on preparing the proposed financing plan. In April, the executive team will review that proposed financing plan along with the submitted projects and make a funding recommendation for the fiscal year 23-24 capital improvement plan. Based on this recommendation, planning and development and finance staff will then work together to compile the proposed CIP document that you see alongside the preliminary budgets. Both the CIP and preliminary budget will then be brought to the board for approval and adoption in June of this year. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Kessler?
Yes, I have some questions. So you lay out the financing at the committee level and they review what opportunities are is part of that grants? Do we look at grants, both federal and state grants?
Yes, so part of our review process when we look at the projects is identifying which projects would be eligible for grant funding. So we go through that process. There are opportunities. I know last year we submitted grants for several projects that we chose not to fund in the plan that we were able to then turn around and submit as grant applications. Some of the hazmat ones were funded. I know Zinfandel, obviously we received funding for, so we do look at that opportunity. Yes.
And so we're successful getting grants? What's the percentage of success?
Of grants that we receive?
Yeah, you're applying for grants for some of these.
I would have to double check, but I do have that.
Okay.
Back at my desk.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you.
Mhm.
We're very successful at submitting and receiving grants.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Yeah. And again, it's humble night, it sounds like. Let's go with your success in grant receiving. Can you give us an idea over the last, say, 5 years of how many grants You and the team have been successful, and let's go with numbers, not the number of grants, but the total dollar figure.
I think in the last 5 years, it's been between 20 and $30 million.
Okay, so hold on. Say it again a little louder.
The last 5 years, between 20 and 30 million.
So when we think about the impact that this team has on our overall CIP, I think if you guys ever need some more warm bodies that have that background, please let us know, because as long as I've been here, this particular area of our business has been highly successful. And I can remember a guy sitting in the back now who was part of that team at its early inception for this department. And he did, like you do, an exceptional job of reducing the burden on our budgets by going out and finding money that is basically languishing out there in the federal government. And they do an unbelievable job. And so I hope that if you ever feel the need that we're missing grants because we don't staff that office at the level that we potentially could, I think the return on investment is off the charts for this group. So I just encourage my colleagues, as we look at this, to constantly go back to you and your team and say, can we put more warm bodies in there, because they pay off tenfold. Congratulations, and thanks for letting me embarrass you as well.
Thank you, Director.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Castleberry, and thank you also to Mr. Fry. All right. Next presentation, we have the roles of the board and fire chief. Chief Haverty is going to do that presentation.
Thank you, President Clark. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. We had talked about this a few months ago. This presentation tonight really coincides with the Brown Act training that we've been receiving, and it goes in a slightly different direction in terms of roles and responsibilities that you have and that I have and that we have in totality here. Thank you. There we go. Perfect. So we'll begin. In kind of a way, I'm kind of taking off my fire chief's hat and putting on my teacher's hat again tonight. So I'd like to kind of start at the basics, and the basics for me are representative democracy, and that kind of is the essence, the foundation of your role and my role. As the elected, you are elected by the citizenry in a particular geography within this jurisdiction, and you come to this dais as their representative. And you appoint me to represent everybody else in the fire department. And so we kind of have these areas of representation that belong, if you will, in your sandbox and in my sandbox, to put it kind of childlike. Our particular district is an independent special district. There are dependent special districts. In fact, when everybody looks at LA County Fire as our colleagues in terms of size, perhaps, and what we accomplish, and in the fire service, they are actually a dependent special district. A dependent special district operates under the appointed board, which are appointed by the Board of Supervisors in that particular county. So we're different in that. And in many ways, as an independent special district, we're more like a city than other types of jurisdictions of dependent nature. And you appoint me. We have independently elected board members, which you are. We stagger those elections, as you know all too well. The board president, acting on behalf of his colleagues, the college, if you will, of board members, has specific duties, and they're identified here. As you are today, Mr. Clark, presiding at this regular board meeting and providing our general direction so that we run through the agenda smoothly and effectively with order and decorum from all members, the public, those present, from staff, and the board itself. We have a length of time for public discussion, although it seems like we're relatively liberal on that, which I appreciate, believe me. You and I coordinate closely on the board agenda, how that agenda is set. We do that with the board clerk, Melissa, and now after this evening, Sherry. You bring requests for policy before your colleagues and before the district to vote on. And as we did this evening, you act in a ceremonial role as well, which we did to celebrate and recognize Mr. Wood's great 10 years with us. And then we have ways of partnering with allied jurisdictions. We'll get into the 2x2 meetings that we do, but those are also ways that that you either directly represent or you delegate that responsibility. The vice president's role is all of that when you're not here. And so not a role that is taken lightly, and I greatly appreciate everything that you and the other executive officers do for our board. Your selection is done once a year for the different offices that you hold and the places that you hold in terms of chairmanship or sitting on the other committees that we have in our jurisdiction. That's done in an open meeting. It's very transparent. Everybody can see how that is accomplished. Before we get here and go down this role for me or your fire chief, I'd like to give some thanks to my good friend Elaine Anderson. Elaine is the city manager in Folsom, close to us here in Sacramento County. And Elaine and her council mayor actually gave almost this entire presentation to my leadership class in Folsom. And I was so impressed with it. I called Elaine last week and I said, hey, can I borrow a lot of what you just did? Because I thought it was so good. And it was so good and relevant for us because of the near relationship that we have as a special district with cities. It almost lines up perfect. Really, all I had to do with a lot of this was kind of change the names and the faces and the pictures. So, this is the role that you have appointed me to do, to represent and really care for, in many ways, our district employees, to handle the administrative aspect of the department, to bring a budget to you that is balanced, appropriate, fiscally responsible, and meets the needs of this jurisdiction. That's my job to you. Luckily, I have great help from our finance department and beyond. On every Friday morning or Friday afternoon, I communicate with you, a regular board communication. My Friday fire chief's report, that's my board of director communication. Plus, as we did today, we had a special circumstance with the incoming weather, and I included you on a message that I sent out to the rest of the command staff within the jurisdiction. I am responsible for the department abiding and adhering to all the laws that are relevant to a special district and to a fire department. Attend board meetings like we are this evening, handle complaints as best I can, delegates some of that, take care, be a steward of everything that this department has. That's my responsibility to you and to the public. Handle your district, the policies that you give me to carry out and you expect me to uphold. Care for and listen to and respond to the community stakeholders and provide public information. In fact, I did a photograph of our public information officer from the second floor. He was doing public information out on the courtyard today. So he's been taking pictures of me. I thought I'd take a picture of him doing an interview too. And then that last one is a pretty broad one. Anything else you tell me to do, basically. So, this is an important slide because it brings you and me together. And so I take this responsibility of developing a relationship first and a partnership with you. And so I try to do that by being open and transparent to you, by sharing information on what we're doing and showing you the rationale and trying to demonstrate to you why we are coming up with plans that we are doing and giving you the whole story. And so I feel a responsibility to that. and I try to do that just as best as I can. We respond to you, either I do directly or I ask one of our staff members to hear you, to listen to you and respond to your questions. And I think that we've been keeping up with that pretty well as well also. There are some items, as you know, that I'm not allowed to share with you, and I'll tell you that, and I'll tell you why when that happens to come up. Every Thursday evening, Director Clark and I sit down and we go over the agenda to make sure that it is aligned properly with his desire and to share, any of the little things that are going to happen in the meeting as they do at every meeting tonight. So I look forward to and I appreciate his interest in doing that. And I hope that is sustains over the time that I'm here and well beyond. Special briefings and site visits. So many of you went out to some of you went out to Station 32. You did a site visit with the congressional visit out there. You've done other site visits. I know you've visited training sites. I encourage that. I encourage you to visit the fire stations to see what's happening in the stations and to listen to our personnel firsthand. I think that's a great way for you to connect directly with the workforce, and I like to hear back from you on what your experience, what kind of fruit that provided for us. We have strategic planning coming up in May. I look forward to that. And we're going to be talking more about that over the next few weeks and as we approach that day. I appreciate from you clear and concise board policy and direction. I need that so that I understand completely what your intent is. So if we were at a structure fire or a military initiative, it would be called commander's intent. It's you telling me exactly what you want. What are the outcomes you want to have happen? And I will make those happen to you happen for you to the best of my ability. But you have to be clear to me and you have to be unified with me, okay? Because you speak as one board, not singular voices. The bottom line that I hope that we are establishing with each other and me with the department as a whole is trust, transparency, open communication, and cooperation so that we can make this relationship happen in a way that serves the people that are paying me and everybody else here to work for them. Those are the ones that we serve. This slide, this depiction is something I've used now for about 25 years. I first started using it when I began teaching with California Special Districts Association, their setting directions class. And I taught it all up and down California to men and women like you, to elected board members from all different kinds of boards and all different kinds of special districts. And I'll tell you, this is probably the hardest slide to actually do of everything that I'm presenting to you tonight. And it comes from the italicized words up above that each of us have our lane. I referred to it as our sandbox before, but maybe our lane. And essentially, you tell me what you want in this fire district, and I tell you how it's going to happen, how we're going to do it, all right? And I tell you, this is the most difficult slide because I've presented this slide not only in those classes to special district board members, but I've presented it to my pastoral council at church, to other faith-based groups, to other boards that I've sat on, Red Cross, where they asked me to come in and teach the same thing. It is hard to do for elected or appointed members on a board because you're not used to doing it. You're used to fixing stuff at the tactical level. That's what we do most of our career. And so to try and figure out what the what means in terms of a board member and strategic thinking, that's hard work. That's hard to do. It's difficult to make that transition, but I'd like to help you with that. And I ask you to be there. And so I ask you to think about the vision of this organization and how that can become a reality, not just a vision of the future. I ask you to think about the mission of this organization how we can best serve the people that we are charged and we take an oath to serve. I'd like to ask you to think about outcomes, not inputs. Okay, if we were thinking systems thinking, outcomes are the end product. It's what it looks like when essentially it's all over. What did we deliver to you or to the people? I'd like you to think about, are we meeting those long-term goals for our service delivery? Overall results is where I'm asking you to think about and go to. Our responsibility is to do the how, to do the implementation piece of what you tell us to do. For us in the fire world, it's our tactics, it's our methods, it's our tasks. So those of you who came out of the fire service, you know, you, like me, understand that language. It's the how to do it. It's the getting the job done. You tell me what you want done, and I'll tell you how we're going to do it. Okay, and if that works for you, we're in alignment. That's great. All right. As the fire chief and the executive management team, we in many ways have a leg in both worlds, because we do provide, like tonight, we provided policy for you to think about and approve. Well, policy is your world, but you know, we're recommending it to you. So the executive staff and I, we kind of have our leg in both worlds, because once you adopt that policy, we step back into the rest of the organization and say, okay, let's implement what the board is asking us to do, right? So we mediate between both worlds, the executive staff does. That's our job, all right? We carry that. I'm going to stop here and ask see if you have any questions, because this is probably the most important slide of all of them.
Are there any questions on the chief?
Good to go?
Proceed, chief.
Okay, I'm almost done.
No, that's fine.
So regional conditions and 2x2s, I've had the great opportunity now to participate in 2 of the 2x2s. It's actually more like a 10x10, because there's way more than 2 people. It's bigger than that, but 2x2 is the colloquialism that we use. That's fine. It's healthy, it's helpful, because we are partnering and trying to understand other jurisdictions, and they're listening, and we're listening to their problems as well. So I love the open dialogue that you as board members come to that and provide as the elected. It gives you a great opportunity to meet with the other elected at the same level, but have staff there to try and figure out, okay, how can we make all this work for both organizations? So it's a great thing. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Ordinances and resolutions, I think Melissa made me put this on here. The ordinances are where to find them. So we want to make sure that we know where they are, district website or internally on the P drive. Our basis for what we do comes out of special district law. And so essentially everything that we do is there. It's also in the health and safety code. It's in the labor code. There's many different references where we have direction on how to do this. Resolutions come from you. You have a bunch of resolutions tonight in terms of finance. Those are essentially authorizations for me to do something. Without those, I can do administrative work, but I can't do your work in most cases. All right. This is my last slide. I'm going to move out here. All of us work for you. All of us here in the fire stations, in the finance cubicles, over at logistics, every one of us. You hired me to unite them, to bring them together as one fire department. And so I just want to, my dad taught me a long time ago. He told me, Dan, praise in public and criticize in private.
Yes, right.
Praise in public, criticize in private.
Mm-hmm.
Our words have power. And so I just ask you to be kind to us, to praise us. And if you want to criticize me, I've got 2 doors in my office. You can come in both doors. Okay? I was told once, I take criticism well. So, if you have problems, I'm your guy, or I'll delegate to somebody. I'd like to hear about it first, all right? That's all I have for you this evening. I appreciate your attention, and I appreciate your willingness to be a board member, to come here night after night, 240 nights at least in 10 years, and support this great fire department. I really do appreciate it. And I know that you have ideas of your own and you want to bring those forward. Let's make it work together, all right?
All right.
Thank you.
Well said, Chief. Thank you for that presentation. We don't have any further questions. Okay. Thank you, Chief.
No.
All right, that was well done. Okay, let's go to action items. We're gonna take action item number 2 first, and then we'll proceed to the number 1 and go on and move on to the rest of the action items. Okay, so the first number 2 action item is the fiscal year 2020 Homeland Security Grant Program Urban Air Security Initiative Grant Award, and Ms. Castleberry is up again, our administrative analyst.
So during my break, I was able to look on my phone and see what some totals are.
All right.
So in the past 5 years, more than 30 grant awards, over $40 million.
All right.
That's
A
right.
percentage, I have to go back
That's
to my
right.
desk and check to see which ones we didn't get, but I can tell you that it's more than 85% success.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, this would be one of them. So last summer, we submitted an application to the Sacramento Area Urban Working Group for a fiscal year 20 UASI grant, that is Urban Area Security Initiative Program, which is under the Homeland Security Grant Program. This is through the efforts of firefighter Tim White and also Assistant Chief John Rudnicki, who is our liaison to the Urban Area Security Working Group. So this request was for some ballistic protective equipment. We actually had submitted a SHISH-GAP grant totaling like $44,000 to fully fund the project. That was partially funded at $14,000. So we then tried to submit an additional request via a different program to make up the balance. So UASI was able to get some disencumbered funds from a previous fiscal year. What that means is that it has a short performance period and they need someone that they know can get something done quickly. So luckily Metro Fire has been successful in getting several disencumbered funds grants in the past. So this one is for $36,000 to fund the balance of the ballistic protective equipment request. And we are asking that the board approve the grant acceptance resolution. The funding for that is included in the mid-year budget, which will be presented here in a moment, and there is no match requirements.
Are we ready for questions? Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we adopt.
I'll second.
All right. Motion by Director Gould, second by Director Jones. Please call the roll, Madam Chair.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Clerk.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa,
Aye.
and Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we're going now to the mid-year budget approval for fiscal year 2022, 2023. CFO Dave O'Toole is going to give us a little, presentation first, and then we're going to vote on each one of the funds individually. So we're going from A to F. So. Proceed, Mr. O'Toole, please.
Thank you, President Clark, board members, our two colleagues and members of the public. Tonight, I will be presenting the 22-23 mid-year budget. This is an update to the final budget you approved in September. That includes actuals through December 2022 and then projections through the balance of the fiscal year. Before I begin, I want to be clear that the budget you'll be considering tonight is balanced and includes no reductions. To show you how we arrived at this fiscal condition, I'll show you the status of all 7 funds. And then we'll turn to the general fund and look at the changes from final to mid-year. We'll look at briefly at the new MOU and how that affected the budget. We'll also look at the 2 intergovernmental transfer programs, IGT programs, which are the Voluntary Rate Range Program and the Public Provider Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. It's a mouthful. I'll go over those in a slide, and then I'll cover 3 structural budget challenges, pressures, if you will, that we've dealt with this year and we'll most likely have to deal with going forward. And then finally, I'll finish up with takeaways. Okay, so this slide is your one slide, big picture, all the essentials here. So for the 22-23 mid-year budget, on our general fund side, we have revenues of 254.5, expenditures of 264.8, obviously about 10 million more there. The net transfer is 11.6, so that's a positive, leaves us with a change in fund balance of 1.4 million. So that is just of the revenues and expenditures that are occurring within this fiscal year, you got a net balance of 1.4 million. On the all fund side, we have revenues of 289.5. We have expenditures of 305.3 million, which incidentally is the first time we've gone over 300 million in expenditures. So waiting to see if there'd be a balloon drop at this point, but I guess not. The net transfers are 8.8 million. We take all the funds together, which leaves us a change in fund balance of negative 7 million. Real briefly, that is not a negative fund balance. That is a change in fund balance across the year. And I'm going to show you the specifics on the next slide. But I do want to note before moving on to the next slide that projected reserve by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th is 36.1 million or 13.4%. Okay, so this is a bit of a busy slide, but it's important because it's putting together probably the 2 tables in the mid-year budget that you probably spent the most time on. That is the budget summary, all funds, and the fund balance summary. Across the top are the 7 funds that we monitor and use, and then down the left column, if you will, there's the first beginning fund balance as of June 30th, 2022. That's effectively the fund balance for those 7 funds when the fiscal year started. And then in the white section, there's the revenues, expenditures, net transfers, change in fund balance. And then at the bottom is the ending fund balance projected at the end of the fiscal year. So this is putting together 2 tables from the budget, and a good way to look at it is the shaded rows are sort of like a savings account, like a personal savings account, if you will, and then the unshaded rows, the white ones, would be like your checking account. So that's where you record how much I received in payroll this month and how much I paid on my mortgage and all the activities that go on during that fiscal year, which can be separated from what was in your savings account when the year started and what was in at the end. So you'll notice, just to get to the bottom line, if you will, you can notice the bottom row, all the numbers are positive, or there's zero there, which means all our funds are positive or will be zero by the end of the year, and I'll talk about those specifically in a moment. But the general fund, that's the next column where it says general fund in the header. That is the numbers that I just mentioned. It has the revenues, expenditures, net transfers, gets you to that 1.4 million again in the fiscal year. The capital facilities fund, we started with a balance of 9 million. There's no revenue source for the capital facilities fund, so we end up transferring funds usually from the general fund or other funds into that, and that's where you see the 13 million in net transfers there, and the expenditures were 21. So then you have, there's a change in fund balance of negative 8 million, which obviously contributes quite a bit to the negative 7 million we saw in the prior slide. And what that represents is as we finance apparatus at this department, and for accounting reasons, when we execute the financing, we have to show that the entire financing that fiscal year. So it's actually getting paid out over 5 years. So that balance won't actually be negative 8 million. We just need to show the expenditure this year. But then when we start the fiscal year, there'll be another large balance. So if you draw your attention back up to the top of that column, it's a 9.1 million. Well, that's that carryover amount from the prior year. So expect that to go back up. Probably another interesting point to make on the capital facilities fund is that balance, a nice even 1.1 million.
Incidentally, that's the amount that we borrowed last year for mid-year to transfer to fill in the hole in the general fund. So we're effectively putting that money back. The leased properties fund is, as you can see across the year, the starting and ending balances and the savings side, if you will, are about 700,000. Not much change there. The grants fund, sort of ballpark there, started out with 400,000, ends up with about 200,000 in the savings year after all the transactions, if you will, during this fiscal year. Development impact fees fund, same place, starts and ends around 4.2 million. The IGT fund, started with about a balance of 76,000, so very little in there. The 26,000 that's shown as revenues, that's a combination of what's coming in from those two IGT programs, the VRP, Voluntary Rate Range Program, and the PPG-EMT, the Public Provider Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. We use that full amount. It gets, when we receive it, we transfer to the general fund. It funds normal operations of the department. And then the projects fund, Zinfandel Training Site, that 200,000, that is, as you heard at your last meeting, that is where for the Zinfandel training facility, we anticipate at this moment receiving, spending about 200,000 on planning, and that figure will be updated as that project moves forward. With that, I'm going to move us on to just to look a little closer at the general fund again. This is where the slide I mentioned, where we can look at the final budget, the mid-year budget, and then the difference. Just kind of going line by line here, the beginning balance that we had in the final budget for general fund was 31.6 million. In the mid-year, it started the year at 31.6, and the mid-year when we adjusted it, it's 34.7, so an increase of 3 million. And that's basically due to the fact that we at the end of after the final budget is we are still closing out the 21-22 fiscal year. It's essentially a carryover amount of 3 million. So that goes back into the general fund. And then the revenues, there's the revenues declined from final to mid-year by 2.8 million. It's a combination, a couple of major factors there would be EMS revenues we expect those to be about 2.5 million lower than we built into the final budget. And a small piece is our property tax. We got an update in January. That's $200,000 lower than what we put in the final budget. So that's your revenue total there. It's about 4.2 million greater than what we had in the final year. On the expenditure side, you see it went up by 8.2. A major factor there would be the MOU, which added about 5.5 million to the current year. With workers' comp is up by about 4.8 million. There's some constant staffing pieces in there as well. So it gets to the 8.2. The other uses is reduced due to some capital facilities underspending. So that's actually just a reduced transfer from the general fund to the capital facilities fund because we anticipated not needing it. So you get a little savings there. The overall expenditure change is 7.4 million. That net change from the final budget to the mid-year, the bottom line within the year is 3.2 million. And then you can see at the bottom there is the reserve as a percent of expenditures. When we did final, it was 13.8%. And now when we're presenting tonight in the mid-year is 13.4%. Obviously, those numbers are about the same. It's about 36 million both times, but the expenditure amount has risen by about 8 million in the, and that's changing your denominator. So you end up, your reserves end up declining from 13.8 to 13.4. So this slide is just a few bullets of major revenue changes. Obviously, these aren't all the revenue changes, but I just want to bring some to light. So you have an overall increase of 4.2 million in revenues which is about a 1.6%. That includes an EMS revenue decline of 2.5 million. Incidentally, that EMS revenue decline, interestingly, is not a reduction in calls. The number of calls has actually risen slightly. It's a reduction in transports. Interesting trend there. The next two bullets are IGT related. So as I said, there's two IGT programs and both of them had a gain relative to the final year. We learned about an adjustment on our VRRP program. We got 1.7 million more than we built into the final budget. And of course, the PPG EMT program was not in the final budget because we didn't at that time anticipate that it was solid, if you will, or was actually going to happen. It did. So we can add the 5.4 million now in the mid-year. So those are just a few highlights for the revenue side. Moving on to the expenditure side, we have an overall increase of 8.2 million. You just saw that number again. It's about a 3.1% increase in the general fund total expenditures. Workers' comp is up about 4.8 million. And then salaries and benefits, and it sort of netted out at about an increase of 3.4 million, which included the MOU pieces, as well as savings related to unfilled positions, medical savings, things of that nature. Services and supplies went up about $1 million relative to the final budget, 0.4%. We also had a reduction in QAF fees. That's a part of the ground emergency medical transport program. That's an element where we contribute money to the state to be able to pull down money there. So because the GEMT ended and was replaced by the PPGEMT, we no longer have to put that $1 million up. So. Okay, this slide is just a kind of a fiscal impact, fiscal display of the MOU agreement. I have there, it's about 5.5 million was the total for this fiscal year. You can see this is a general fund display. The gray column is the final budget numbers that we've kind of gotten familiar with on previous slides. The blue column is your final plus MOU. So there's a MOU from 1/1/23 to 6/30/23 cost. There's that 5.5 million. Just at that point, if nothing else had changed, it would have increased our expenditures to 262.1 million. And with that, the net transfers that were available in the final of 3.7, there was a change in fund balance of negative $1 million. So not really again, it wouldn't have affected we still have a sizable reserve, but it would have impacted the reserve. Of course, that's not actually what happened. There were quite a few more changes in the mid-year budget. And that's the yellow column there at the far right. Just shows that the adjusted reserves, adjusted revenue total of 254.5 million. And then there's an expenditure amount that we had in the mid-year, in the final with adjustments. And I've just pulled out the few big ones. There's that MOU cost of 5.5 million. There's the workers' compensation cost of 4.8. There were other sort of net expenditure changes that reduced expenditures overall and gets you to the 264.7 million. And then there's the 11.6 again, which is largely those IGT pieces that I mentioned on the prior slide that come in. They can be transferred to the general fund, and you end up with a 1.4 million again, that figure. And just for future awareness, if you will, just have on the slide too, the estimated MOU cost for next year is 15.2 million, and the estimated cost for the subsequent year is 19.4. Okay, so spending a moment on the intergovernmental transfer program, there's quite a bit could be said about these, but I've just provided some overview slides. So when we look at the IGT fund, for a long time, it was just the voluntary rate range program, but in this organization, we just called it IGT. Well, we have to complicate it a little bit more now because there's actually two IGTs. There's a VRRP program, again, which we've known for years, and now this new PPGEMT. So when you start to hear IGT, just you'll be hearing about both unless it's otherwise specified. Okay, so quickly, a few bullets on these. So the VRRP, as it noted, it's often referred to as IGT. It's an intergovernmental transfer program. We put money up to the state DHCS, Department of Healthcare Services, who combines local agency funds to pull down federal funds. It's a match program. And the most recent district transfer was 5.5 million. In addition, we had to pay DHCS 1.1 million for their administrative burden of transferring our money. And then once secured, the federal funds are transferred to a private managed care providers who take their share of the transference, if you will. And we earn, as it says here, a net income of 10.4 million. So it's about a 3-to-1 return on what we put up with the VRRP. On the public provider ground emergency medical transport program, the net income that we saw in prior slides is 5.6 million. The program was authorized under AB 1705 in 2019 as it replaced the GEMT programs, the QAF, as I mentioned before, quality assurance fee, as well as the certified public expenditure. Both of those ended at the end of December. The next day, flip the switch, PPGEMT stands up. At least that's what we'd like all the managed care providers to do. But that is how the law was intended and how it is being implemented. So the existing GMT programs, as noted there, were replaced by a flat payment per Medi-Cal transport of $1,065, which is approximately $947 higher than the previous rate. So a pretty substantial bump there. DHCS also charges an administrative fee of 10% for their administration of the program, of course, and then less those fees this year, first year, 6 months, the federal funds of the district are about $2.16 per dollar we put up. So that's where it is after 6 months. That's an evolving number, and we'll be reporting more on that as we go to our next budget. Okay, the next, this slide and the 3 slides that follow, I just wanted to bring awareness to some structural budget pressures. All these pressures that I'm going to cover, which are there on the screen, the constant staffing, workers' comp costs, and declining non-general fund balances are all addressed in the mid-year budget. These are issues that I wanted to bring to your attention for consideration going forward, and questions you may have. We've been dealing with these for years, and I will just say that COVID has been blamed for these increases. I think we can acknowledge we're mostly moved past COVID, so the fact that they're still persisting suggests that these are issues that we need to pay attention to. Again, while we're discussing them tonight. So the first section is constant staffing. To just introduce you to the data on the table there, in 2018-19, in our final budget, you can see there was 15.575 million. That's how much we had in the final budget. And kind of follow that number across, it goes up to 18-17. In this current year, we put in more than ever at 19.4 million. The actual costs were substantially higher. In 18-19, they were 23 million. In 19-20, they took a dip, had more in funding, more in final budget than actual costs. But since then, they've been around 6 to 7 million. And you can see the difference line there, as well as percent over budget, which has been in the 30s to 40% for 4 of the last 5 years. These, when the cost it does go over like this, we typically will have savings in things like wages in the labor budgets, think of wages and so forth, because we do budget our positions as full, and they're usually not all full. So we can find some savings there, and that's typically how we're addressing it and finding other kind of related savings. But it is an issue, and it's not, obviously it's a significant deviation from from the budget you approved in the final budget. The next pressure is the workers' compensation costs. Again, a simple 5-year look. You can see that we have been putting in the final budget about 2.2, 2.4 million pretty consistently across all 5 years. The actual costs were relatively stable in those first 2 years of the 5-year look, but they've been creeping up. And now from 2020, they were 3.2, last year 3.4. This year we're projecting almost 7.2 million, which is a 200% increase relative to what we had in the final. So that's a look at workers' comp costs. And then the last pressure I wanted to bring to light is just the non-general fund balances. What has happened to them over the years is, these are funds that are that we can transfer from, if we like last year, we did transfer from the Capital Facilities Fund and the IGT fund to help fill in the budget hole that we had at mid-year. Thank goodness we don't have that this year. But those balances are declining. They're also can be used for cash purposes during the fiscal year. We can borrow cash and we won't have to borrow as much from the county. So there's a benefit there as well. Overall, I just want to note, you can see the totals there have generally declined. When it was at 18-19, it was 4.6, and then it gets up to 11, and almost 18 million in 21-22, and then it's down to 1.8. The big variance there that you can obviously see on the IGT line, it went from 14 to 0. That 14 million we used, and we had planned to use about 8.7 million of it for the annual budget, but the balance of there, that's additional 6 million or so. The program changed on us mid-year, and DHCS ended up shifting the timing of payments out 6 months. So we lost about 6 million last year due to a timing difference. We will eventually get it. It'll just follow a little later than we thought it was going to be. But that was when we were facing the mid-year last year. That was a dilemma, that we didn't have 6 million to help solve it that we otherwise thought we would have. But anyway, just wanted to bring those three pressures to your attention. We've already started preliminary budget, believe it or not, for 23-24. Those kind of things just to keep in mind going forward. So this slide is just a quick summary of what we talked about. There's some highlights. Again, that mid-year adjustments result in a projected fiscal year general fund change of 1.4 million. There are no budget reductions in this mid-year budget. We are reflecting the new PPG EMT program and the net gain of 5.4 million there. This budget implements the first 6 months of the MOU. It also restores 1.1 million to the capital facilities fund that were borrowed last year in the 21-22 budget. The workers' comp reserve, I hadn't brought that up. We have a $4 million workers' comp reserve. This budget does not touch that reserve. And yet the structural budget challenges, the pressures I just mentioned, they persist. They were solved in this mid-year, but would expect us to be keeping an eye on addressing them going forward. And then that last bullet there is the balances again, 36 million in and 13.4% is projected for the end of this fiscal year, contrasting this with 36.1, almost 36.2 last year, 13.8%. So that's your general fund reserve trend. So my recommendation is to approve the resolutions to adopt for the mid-year budget amendments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. I welcome your questions.
Before we go on, we have questions.
Yes,
Director Jones?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I really, really appreciate it. And my understanding is that we will be sent this PowerPoint at some time after the meeting so that we have it for our references. That's great. Mr. O'Toole, I'm sorry, I have one question here and I'm a little bit confused because in your oral presentation, you said the MOU would cost like 5.1 million, and then that was in one of these recent slides. But somewhere in between those two in another slide, it said 3.1, and perhaps it's the time that's represented there. Could you help me understand that?
Certainly, the 5.5 million, it was the MOU cost that we had for all the pieces. That was the total that we came up with. The 3.1 was the net. Let me turn to the slide here. I think I'll find it so we can all see it. I think that was the net.
There we go.
There. Okay, so what line are we on?
The 3. I'm pretty sure that was it. No, it references the MOU. Net change including.
Yeah. Am I getting the question right?
Well, I'm not sure. How come it says 3.4 here and then later it says 5 point something?
So the salary and benefits, what this is showing is across all the labor costs. We had savings. We had the 5.5, of course, and we also had savings of about 1.4 million in wages because we didn't have all our positions filled. So we can, at mid-year, we always score that as a savings there. We also had savings of 900,000 exactly in our medical costs. We renegotiated contracts there. And that there was one other factor of 900,000, not thinking top of mind, but there's savings in different categories in the labor.
Okay. But did the MOU change cost us 5.1 million or 3.4?
It costs us 5.5. So that increase is that 3.4 is reflecting the offset of savings in other categories.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. 5.1, 5.5.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Any other questions before we put this to vote? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. O'Toole. Okay, the first, I entertain a motion for item A, resolution 2022-23 mid-year budget for the general operating fund. 212A.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
What you said.
Yeah, let's state it out.
Okay. Did I state that?
Oh, no, you did great.
Okay, I just want to make sure, right, we're doing this right. Okay, so we have a motion by Director Weber and a second by Director Gould. And clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item B, resolution 2022, 2023 mid-year budget for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D.
Mr. Chair, I move action item 1B, Facilities Fund 2.212D.
All right,
Second.
Director Jones is a motion and Director Gould seconded. Call the roll, please.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item C, resolution 2022-23 mid-year budget for the Grants Fund 212G.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Director
Second.
Weber, second by Director Gould. Please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. Item D, resolution 22-23 mid-year budget for the leased properties fund 212L. Motion.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Director
Second.
Jones.
Second.
What was that? Costa? Yeah, okay. Director Jones motioned and seconded by Director Costa. Call the roll, please.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item, resolution 22-23 mid-year budget for intergovernmental transfer, IGT Fund 212M. Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move 1.
Second.
Intergovernmental, IGT Fund 212. M.
All right. Director Jones motion, seconded by Director Gould. Call the roll, please.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Okay, aye.
Motion
Final item on this mid-year budget approval for fiscal year 22-23. Special Projects Fund 212S. Motion. Okay,
Motion to approve.
Director Costa,
I'll second.
second by Director Gould, who's closest to me. Call the roll, please.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa.
Aye.
And Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, that concludes that first item, that second item on the agenda, on the action item. Next, we have a termination of emergency work, station 101.
Madam Clerk Pinief for the very last time. Tyler Wagaman, Deputy Chief of Support Services. I would like to provide you with an update of Station 101 located at 3000 Fulton Avenue, following a kitchen fire that occurred on January 29th. I'm happy to report that Phase 1, the emergency cleaning and debris removal, has been completed, and Phase 2, the RFP, is well underway with the job walk already completed. With that, it is staff's recommendation that the emergency be terminated as the exigency no longer exists. Engine 101 and Medic 101 have safely reoccupied the dormitory, apparatus bay, office, and EMS storage room. In order to terminate this emergency, it will require a 4/5 vote tonight. End of report. Any questions?
Do you have any questions?
I do.
Okay, Director Weber.
By terminating this, that sets us up for open bid process in the future, correct?
That is correct. In fact, the RFP is already underway for reconstruction services. We will be utilizing our formal bidding process for that.
Thank you.
Excellent. Director Gould.
Chief, did you say it takes a 4/5 vote?
That's correct.
Fascinating. 4/5 for this, but what is it, 51% to tax the heck out of us? Interesting. Okay, I make a motion, we adopt.
We have a motion by Director Gould, second by Director Weber. Please call the roll, please.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa,
Aye.
and Rice, or excuse me, and Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is California Special District nomination for the Sierra Network, seat C. Board Clerk Willie Pinilla will address this.
Good evening, board members. Before you this evening, our California Special Districts Association is calling for nominations. This is for the Sierra Network, which Metro Fire is in, and it is for seat C. They have 3 seats, they rotate, and this will be for the 2024-2026 term. Members are eligible and they're in good standing with CSDA, and we are in fact in good standing. We can nominate a board member or a manager if they so wish. The nominations are due March 31st. So while a decision does not need to be made tonight, it does take board action to make this nomination. So if it's something that you want to think about and bring to the next meeting, that is still an option. And with that, I would take any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions of the board? Yes.
Board Clerk Pinilla, have you been approached by any members of this dais that have expressed interest in having their name forwarded as a nominee?
I have not.
Dang it.
Is there
Anybody?
else?
Look at me. No, actually, yes, I would, my plate is full, but I would encourage any of our directors who are interested in CSDA portion of the governance structure around here in this state. Take a look, or I'll be glad to answer any questions or to call CSDA and ask about responsibilities and the nature of the different policies and implementations and legislative list, legislative actions that they have been doing the last year. So I would really encourage anyone who's at all interested to give CSDA a call. I'll be glad to share names and numbers.
Mr. Chair, Melissa, it says general manager. Is that language out of their elections material? So we don't have a general manager that I'm aware of. So how's that work?
I would consider employees of the rank of assistant chief. On
Okay,
that,
okay.
with, some of our managers.
Yeah, okay.
To be eligible for that.
We had
We,
any-
I think as-
we do not set the criteria for that. That is something that CSDA.
Okay, because I think Director Jones brings up a really important, I think this is a great opportunity for someone to have a better understanding of how special districts work and those things. And I'm more than happy to, if we can, open it up to any one of our qualified employees who could then reach out to you, express interest. I'd much rather have somebody that has an interest in that than by default appoint one of us or somebody else. So I think we should wait and find out what the field, so to speak, is if they're interested, because it is a great opportunity, as Director Jones has mentioned. That'd be my recommendation if nobody sitting up here wants to jump in the fray.
Currently, we don't. We have 2 directors absent, but I don't know.
Oh, let's
Well, then let's appoint one of them.
It's not a put, it's a
I mean,
nomination.
I'm sorry,
Nomination.
nomination.
Yeah,
So,
that's
thank
not
you.
a for sure thing at all.
Thank you for that.
Takes companion.
Thank you, Director Jones. I misspoke. Well, I don't know that we can nominate anyone in absentia. No, we can't. So-
Words out, Mr. President. Volunteers may be forthcoming.
All right, so we will table it in a sense, right? So we'll put it,
If you want to add it to the next agenda, just let me or Sharon know.
please, I would like to add it to the next agenda. Let you know right now.
So I'm wondering if the chief, in your interactions with the qualified candidate pool, if this could be something that could be discussed, if there's anybody in the ranks that qualify, could be interested, because I'd hate to see us not put a name.
I know, yeah.
So as a board, are you asking me to ask my staff if they'd like to be
Yes.
interested?
Yes.
I'd be happy to do that.
All right. All right, and so we'll re-agendize this in the next meeting. All right, the next item is the Leadership Legacy Recognition Committee. And our recommendation is to appoint 2 board members and a third as an alternate to serve on the Leadership Legacy Review Committee. Let's see, does anyone want to be on this review committee?
Says you're going to appoint you.
Yeah, well, okay, well, I don't want to appoint someone that doesn't want to do it.
Oh,
You know what I mean? I'm just, you know,
I'm trying to catch up as I am right now, trying to learn my role. Before I
okay,
take on another one, I'm already on it.
I'm already on it. So, and the chief is, and, okay, Director Wood?
Put me down.
Okay, Director Wood is appointed. Anyone else?
do you need you and 2 others?
Yes.
Do we have some?
We need 2 board members and a third alternate.
So
Okay, Director Sailors?
I'll be alternate.
We need to get that second one. What we gonna alternate? Okay, so we have Sailors and Wood. Who else?
Well, you, right?
You.
Well, I'm already by default.
The-
by policy, you're one of the people.
One of the 2.
Exactly.
The board president.
Yeah.
Requires 2 other board members, the fire chief and past recipients of the award, which we've only had one, former
Okay,
Chief Hanky.
right.
So I think we're reaching out to Chief Hanky, yes,
Yes.
to confirm his ability to do that. If not, we need the alternate to, because you need a 5 per year policy,
Right.
5 people.
Right.
So if former Chief Hanky is not able to do it, we'd have to have another board member available to take on.
Okay, so we got Sailors, Wood and
And
myself.
it's one meeting where you consider the qualifications and the criteria. Each fill out a form that sets forth a rating of 1 to 7.
Oh, wow.
And there's so many points that have to be garnered. I'm the one who's supposed to tabulate that and report back to the president. It's something that could be scheduled probably on a Zoom meeting and held in one session.
Okay. So we got Sailors, Wood and myself.
Mr. President, I'll help. So if you're looking for another member.
Okay, there we go. Got our third person. All right. Thank you, Director Costa.
I think your board clerk wants to say something.
All right, so President Clark, I have Director Wood and Sailors
Yes,
on the committee.
Yes.
Director Costa will serve as an alternate.
yes,
Would we like to make a motion for this?
yes. I need a motion.
I make a motion that we appoint said names to the Leadership
Second.
Legacy
Said names.
Committee
Okay,
with all the powers invested in them.
Director Gould moved it and we are seconded by Director Jones. Please call roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Costa,
Aye.
and Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Next, we go to reports, President's report. I don't have anything to report. I just, tonight is, it really pains me to say, is Board Clerk Melissa Penilla's last day. And I just want to thank her for all the trouble that she saved us from getting into. I mean, she's full of, she has been just an excellent clerk, board clerk, and I'm gonna miss her. I know, and I think I'm speaking for the board. And I just wish her Godspeed on her mission to take care of her baby boys. It's a very honorable thing you're doing, and I'm just glad that somebody's not stealing. If anybody's gonna steal her, it would be her boys, you know, and not some other agency or something like that. So I just want to thank her for all the years that I've had to deal with her and she's just been amazing. I just thank you for your service is the best way I could put it.
My pleasure.
And so and then of course we'll end up done their board's comments and questions, and I'm sure the rest of the board members can chime in and but I just wanted to say that under our report. Chief, did we want to?
Yeah, we have a little something to do.
Yes.
President Clark, could you join me?
Yes, I'd like to do that now.
So we've already given 1 years of service to them away this evening. We have a 15 years of service and it's due tomorrow.
Yeah.
On your final day with the district. And so Director President Clark wanted to present this to you on behalf of the board.
Well, there,
The district.
put that in your trophy case.
I will.
Yes, thanks, Ken. We try to-
Thank you for your dedicated service to the
I
department.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I will thank all of the directors of the days this evening. I did a quick tally and over my 9 years as board clerk, there have been 18 of you. Yes, which I think speaks volumes because we have a really cohesive group here and it has been wonderful to work with each and every one of you and all of the ones who were here before you. I'll make special mention to Directors Gould, Clark, Jones, and you're hiding back there, Wood, because you've been here with me the whole time. And I very much appreciate your leadership here at Metro Fire and all the inspiration you've given me. Director Weber, Director Costa, I wish my time with you was longer. It's been a pleasure to orient you to the board and bring you on, and I can't wait to see what you do with your seat. And Director Sailors, it was an absolute pleasure working with you as the president last year. So thank you for everything you did for Metro Fire. And Chief Haverty, I really enjoyed working with you, and I wish our time together was longer too. And if you were a permanent chief here, it would have made my decision that much harder. So, thank you to everyone. And
We have a little something for you here too.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for
All right.
everything.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
All right, Melissa.
This is adjourn and go home.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we just adjourn and go home now?
No. All right, that was great. Next, we have the Fire Chief's report. Interim Chief Haverty.
Thank you, President Clark, once again. I wanted to provide you some information. The meteorologists are calling for a pretty dramatic storm that's coming upon California and our geography in particular. And so this morning, the department started to lean forward and prepare for that. So I just kind of wanted to share some of the things that your firefighters, captains, battalion chiefs, engineers, assistant chiefs, all are doing today and are doing right now, actually. So the Emergency Operations Center at the county will be activated in 4 minutes. So they're going to come online to provide overhead support. We have an OES pre-position request that's submitted for our helicopter, 3 local government dispatchers and 8 local government overhead. That's a way that we can secure the financing for it. So to make our chief financial officer happy. So if OES says, yeah, we can pre-position those, then that's a legitimate cost for them. Our CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, is available starting at 6 o'clock this evening until 12, I believe 12 noon tomorrow. There's actually a CERT class, a beginner class, starting tomorrow as well. Our staffing for the district, just normal staffing, looks good, so we're happy about that. And we have a contingency plan to staff our helicopter on a 1-hour response as needed right now. Our support services division through the community risk reduction division have 9 of their members that are available to respond to hazard calls within our district to relieve our first responders on simple calls, lines down, trees across roads, things like that. So we appreciate that. Station 110 had a generator problem, and so this morning I asked everybody to check the generators out, make sure everything's running. That one turned up malfunctioning, but a generator has already been dropped off from support services to provide partial power in the event of power failure. Our facilities division is available to respond to power outages at all the fire stations through the storm, and also to remove any debris on the station ramps or areas so that we continue to have good access and egress for our primary responders. They also have tuned up a set of generators that can be distributed out in case we have a breakdown out in the field for that. Stations 54 and 64 don't have generators, and so they probably by now they do have one portable so that they can have emergency power there. So those are just some of the things that the department is leaning forward with as we speak, and we've also notified our managers to be available on Saturday and Sunday or Monday in case we need to stand up our department operations center like we did for the very first time at the beginning of the year. So I appreciate everybody's support in that. I wanted to let you know about some hiring that's happening right now from, I'm going to take a little bit of your wind, Melissa. So we have 2, please correct me if I get these wrong, 2 office technicians. They just finished their interviews, and so they're going into their next phase. 2 accounting technicians are in the hiring pipeline, but not yet at interview stage. Is that?
They've interviewed for an internal promotion.
Great, thank you.
Yesterday.
So we have an arson investigator. We've got a job offer, and he's in the background process now. And a logistics technician also has a job offer and in the background process. And then a CRRD specialist. I didn't get the full briefing on that. It's out there as an opening, I believe, right now, but we haven't had that. Not really, huh? Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
And then at our next board meeting, I'd like to come to you with some recommendations on an expansion of our service delivery program, and to complement that, some other support positions that we would need in the department as well. And so that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks for you. We have a conflict of interest training that Melissa and Sherry have scheduled for your next board meeting. It runs from 3 to 5 p.m. on the 23rd. And that'll be Pat, Paul, and Doug again coming back for a conflict of interest. And Melissa has some news about a summer event.
I do. I will share with everyone that Director Wood brought to our attention that we had a wonderful experience going out off-site for some of our board meetings. And so we took a look at the calendar, and we are hopeful that June 22nd will be a lighter meeting, considering we will had hopefully just approved the preliminary budget. And we are working with the crew at Station 68 to begin coordinating what that will look like. All of the logistics and the reminders will go out for that shortly. So mark your calendars.
That concludes our report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. We kind of stopped doing those after COVID came. But it was always fun to do those, to have a meeting at one of the stations. All right, next we have the operations report. Chief Mitchell, I don't see him here.
There's no, the operations was kind of included in my report, sir.
Oh, okay.
And also administrative services does not have a report tonight either.
Okay, and then support services is next then. Deputy Chief Wagaman.
Three-year law enforcement veteran myself, I can speak firsthand. Our team is highly educated, trained, and they well exceed the minimum standard required in order to investigate fires in our jurisdiction. The person that knows far more about this than I do, and I'm going to introduce him now, and the person that leads this elite team is Supervising Investigator Chris Rogers. Chris?
That we have an FIU, of course, but kind of the unique situation we have here at Metro Fire is our FIU does provide 24/7 service. There's not a lot of fire agencies within this region, and really not a lot within the state that do that. So we are very fortunate here at Metro Fire to have that service. So why we do fire investigations, that's the big question. Well, statutorily, the fire department or the fire district is or are the ones responsible for conducting fire investigations. A couple of reasons why we do that, not really because of arson at all. That's not the fire department's main function. It's to identify items that may need to be recalled. It's to see how people react to fires, because we learn from that. Fires, the way that they spread has led to creating new building construction that is less flammable, also for education purposes. Also, the unique thing about our fire investigators is we are full state peace officers. How we get that authority is we actually get that authority from the fire chief. The chief has the power to designate certain members of the district to be peace officers, members that where their full-time responsibilities are tracking down arsonists, putting arsonists in jail. They can actually be designated as peace officers. So all of our investigators are full-fledged peace officers. Being peace officers, we have the same dangers that any other city police or sheriff's department have. We face those dangers every day. That's why we carry firearms, we carry pepper spray, tasers, batons. So we do face those same dangers. Part of what we do here at Metro Fire, which is also unique from just investigating fires, is we actually investigate the crime of arson. Normally, that's going to fall under the law enforcement agency of jurisdiction. We have a MOU with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department to where we actually investigate arson and fire-related crimes that come within their jurisdiction as long as it falls within the district. So we're the ones that do that. We're the ones that conduct the criminal follow-up. We're the ones that write the search warrants for that. So that's what our investigators do. Part of the responsibilities we have in addition to responding to fires is we do follow up on all those criminal cases, which takes a huge amount of time for our investigators. We can write search warrants, we do surveillance operations, we track down additional witnesses, identify and interview and arrest suspects. We do that in addition to just responding to the fires. Now, some of the fires that we do respond to is obviously we respond to fires that are suspected to be arson or suspicious in nature. We also respond to fires where there's a major injury or a fatality. We respond to incidents where persons possess large amounts of explosives, fireworks, Molotov cocktails. Any incident that is believed it's going to result in some sort of significant documentation, maybe legal issues down the road, we're going to come out, we're going to investigate those for the district to ensure there's a thorough investigation. So those are some of the things that we do. What I'd like to also tell you a little about tonight is some of the stats that we've collected over the last 2 years. So the total count of incidents that our investigators have responded to in the last 2 years, in 2021, we responded to a total of 354 incidents. In 2022, that total jumped to 448. That's a 26.5% increase from 2021. Total count of FIU case numbers generated. Now, a case number, that's something that we generate sometimes. Even if we don't go to a call, we have other incidents where it causes us to create case numbers. In 2021, we had 369 case numbers generated. In 2022, that number jumped to 559 cases. That's a 51.4% increase just from 2021 to 2022. Total count of fires classified as incendiary or arson. In 2021, we had 106. In 2022, that count jumped up to 126. That's 18%. Responses related to transient activity. 2021 went from 53 incidents to 112 incidents in 2022. That's an increase of 111% of fires that we responded to that are related to homeless activity. Total count of investigations closed by arrest in 2021, we had 19. That made up 30.15% of our fires that were determined to be arson. In 2022, that number increased to 28. However, because of the increase in the amount of incendiary fires we actually had, that percentage only came out to 22.22%, which is actually a 7.9% decrease in cases or arson cases that actually resulted in arson. Part of what we've been doing is we have a total of 2 full-time investigators right now that have been covering 24-hour shifts. We have one position that's vacant. I'm proud of our investigative team for stepping up, ensuring that all those shifts remain covered so that we can provide the same level of service that we always have. A recommendation that I make to the board and to anybody that's a member of our district is I invite you to come on a ride along. Personally see what our investigators do, meet our investigators, see what some of our challenges are. That concludes my presentation or my report. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any at this time.
Do we have any questions? Oh, yes, Director Saylor.
How many more investigators would you like to have in your unit to make you feel that you have a fully staffed unit?
Well, part of our biggest challenge right now that we face is officer safety. As I explained, we face the same dangers that any other state peace officer does. Right now, we are running one investigator per shift. We've had a couple of recent incidents over the last 2 years. We had an investigator that had to deploy a taser against a dangerous subject that was posing an immediate threat. Just recently, this last week, we had an investigator that was just simply trying to interview a suspect who became combative. That investigator called for backup. Good thing with the sheriff's department is a lot of times we can rely on the sheriff's department for backup, but they're not always available. They're busy themselves. So as a matter of fact, this most recent incident, the sheriff's department was not immediately available. So our investigator had to essentially take physical control of this suspect. Luckily, the engine crew was still on scene. They assisted, but that's a situation. I don't know that we really want to be putting our engine crews in that situation all the time. So I would say 2 investigators per shift, I think would be sufficient for officer safety. Another challenge we face is also conducting criminal investigations. That takes a lot of time and effort. A lot of times our investigators that are working shifts, especially during the summer months, they're going from fire to fire to fire. Our chances of actually following up on cases and putting them together, it becomes slim. So I'd like to see that as well.
So you would probably need, excuse me, a full-time follow-up person, full-time supervisor, maybe 4 full-time, so you can double up your investigators.
Yes, I would say an additional 3 shift investigators to have 2 investigators per shift, and then yes, a day follow-up person.
How much time do you spend in court?
We spend quite a bit of time in court, and a lot of times it's also on our days off. We come in court. We have a lot of preliminary hearings. I'd say probably with the amount of arson cases we have, probably 30 to 40% of those go to prelim. The ones that go to trial obviously aren't as high, but yes, we do spend a lot of time either in criminal court, also with the accidental and the fatal fires we investigate. We spend quite a bit of time testifying in civil depositions as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Director Gould.
Sir, really quickly, given the statistics that you shared with us, which are a little shocking, but not unexpected given this community and some of the changes that have happened there, is it true that we don't generate any kind of revenue or cost recovery through your efforts? You don't bill an arsonist.
Correct.
Okay, so I think what I'm trying to get at is there is a service that Metro Fire is doing in this community as part of the overall cost in our general budget. And we're in some cases doing the job of maybe other agencies in this community. I'm just wondering if the conversations with our supervisors might be in order to figure out a way where the burden of the efforts that your organization within our organization put out can in some way be those that can be shared amongst other county agencies. I mean, frankly, you guys are doing a great job and that number doesn't look to be getting any smaller. And when I rode with the poor folks at 24, it seemed like we were getting up a lot to go out and put out fires that, had an origin that was not in question. And it seems to me, and I know it's a really good thing because we're preventing some significant property loss and life loss potentially, but it seems to me like we're bearing the burden of that service. And I think there's other agencies in this community that could dole up a little out of their budgets to stabilize that and potentially make you whole in however you describe that. But thank you for your work and thank you for your team. We know we're kicking you in the teeth a bit, basically based on these fires that frankly, folks, they come in from all parts of these other communities. They camp out here and then to stay warm, they start stuff on fire oftentimes. And it's your job to go figure out, how that happened, why it happened. And we got to stop this stuff because I saw just in a couple of days I was with the men and women, they're lighting the side of buildings on fire, just so many things that really, I think, destroy our small businesses. you know, they're worried out of their minds that they're going to show up and their building's going to be on fire because of that. So thanks for your work. If I can help in any way to figure out a revenue stream, I'd love to figure that out with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right, thank you for your presentation,
Thank you.
Chief Wagner. All right, next we have our labor liaison. BC Matt Cole, local 2522 vice president.
Good evening, everybody. So since we last met, we've been conducting our regular business of Mocha Mondays and What Up Wednesdays and just staying connected with the membership. But we've been focused on a lot of work, myself, President Jameson, the directors, on meetings up and down the state, meeting with other labor groups, focusing on the PPG EMT with the presentation that Dave O'Toole gave, and the percentage of budget and the opportunity that hopefully that will provide to Metro to bring on more investigators and inspectors and hopefully deploy some more resources and get some more mechanics and some more professional staff here. We're really focusing on what the foundation of that program is and what it can mean for folks up and down the state. And our efforts specifically have lightened the load for Metro Fire because the way that program is built is a non-federal share that I think I've spoken to most of you about. So we've been pretty busy, and I'd like to just report out that we've been pretty successful in cleaning some of that up. There's still work to do, so I will be on the road again Monday. But what I really want to share with you is I just flew in late last night from our legislative conference in Washington, DC. And it was an honor and a privilege to represent the men and women of Local 522 and CPF in that IAF lift there in Metro Fire. We were able to bring 8 members of 522 out. 5 of them were Metro members from the executive board and shop stewards. We were able to visit Ami Bera's office, Kevin Kiley's office. We sat with Doris Matsui, Congressman Garamendi. So it was really valuable to be able to sit and speak to some issues that we were standing side by side with brothers and sisters from other states that have challenges like we don't, like free speech and collective bargaining. But focus on some of the public safety officer benefits associated with cancer coverage that the national government does not recognize and give assistance. 75% of our line of duty deaths are tied to job-related cancer. So speaking to them to try to help us cover some of those expenses and support the service that we offer all the way down to the local level is great. What we really focused on was the PFAS issue. And I just want to share with you that there is an alternative PFAS act pushing. Congresswoman Dingell is sponsoring it, and we're looking to get federal funding for research and development and start to identify what other options and what other engineering efforts can go into providing us with turnouts that do not expose us to cancer. It is pretty shocking to all of the electeds that we sat with that there is no other option. And regardless of what aisle you said on, it was pretty powerful to be able to visit offices, both red and blue. But the President of the United States came and spoke to us. Maybe some of you saw that feed. I think there's some videos out there. I mean, it was a pretty intimate group, and to have the President of the United States speak to these issues and speak to our turnout gear specifically and how important it is and should be for all legislators to protect those that are out protecting the communities. It was powerful. And so I just like to report out, like, I feel like we went and represented well, and information we brought back, I think is going to tool us up to hopefully make some good decisions here also. So I came right back in, and this morning we had a PFAS meeting here. So working with Chief Lozano and his staff, getting a message out and coordinating that with Chief Haverty here sooner or later, get our members notified, start to make some immediate changes, and then work with the folks both in the state and at the federal level to come up with solutions. I've talked to that a little bit with you, so I just wanted to share that it was a big talking point there on Capitol Hill, and we're all collaborative in that lift. So with that, I would also just like to thank Melissa for putting up with me over really like the last 14 months. Probably been more challenging than the rest of our career, but she's always been here whenever I've needed her, and I really appreciate our friendship and professional working relationship. So thank you and congratulations. unless anybody has any further questions, that will conclude my report.
Yeah, I think I saw I think it was on C-SPAN that I saw the president address the body, and I mean, it was powerful. I've never seen one of our presidents really do something like that and, you know, acknowledge the fire service the way he did.
It's the first time that a seated president has spoken to the IFF body, so that was very unique. I can tell you the security around there was super impressive also. And one thing that was pretty powerful, and even our general president, Ed Kelly, spoke to it. He came up and joined President Biden on stage. And what the president said was, and he went through like the exposure and the sleep deprivation, and he talked about recruiting. Like clearly we're bending his ear, his staff's bending his ear on all the issues that we all feel, and everybody's feeling them from coast to coast. But he broke them all down. But then he finally just said, the only thing that makes firefighters safer is more firefighters.
Yes,
and he's right? Like whether it's the exposure to cancer because we're running in and out all these buildings, or we're up all night running all these calls, or just everything compounds. And he said, I don't know why anybody would want to do this job. And I think we feel a little bit of that, right? Like my son has no interest because of all of the things. He comes home and sees me pulling my hair out. So as we fix these things, our recruitment issues will fix. But we do have to get more firefighters, just like we have to get more investigators. And so to Chief Haverty's comment a bit ago about the next board meeting, I do look forward to the next coming weeks working on that deployment vision. We have a workshop coming up where we're going to look at constant staffing and talk about the numbers that Dave's putting on the slides. I believe that we're all in on this lift together. But to hear that all the way up at the level of the president, like I was like, heck yeah, Joe, go.
It was impressive.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any questions? No. All right. Thank you, BC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we go to committee and delegate reports. Executive committee has nothing to report. Communications Center, JPA, DC Wagman.
Chief of Support Services reporting on behalf of SRFDC Dispatch Board. The Dispatch Board last met on Tuesday, February 28th at Consumnes Fire. In attendance was Assistant Chief Wilson, Folsom Fire, Assistant Chief Williams, Sacramento City Fire, Deputy Chief Quiggle from Consumnes Fire. He was remote and approved by the board to do so, and myself. All of which were unanimously approved. The first was a GIS analyst job description. They were experiencing the same challenges that Metro Fire has, and that finding a qualified candidate with the current job description was very tricky. So they had to do some work on that job description. It's the same thing that we did about a year ago here. Additionally, we signed a contract for consulting services for Kimberly Miller. She is a doctor who specializes in leadership and cultural development specific to dispatch centers. So very unique field. I've heard nothing but positives about her, and I look forward to multiple interactions with her throughout the rest of the fiscal year, interacting with all of the dispatch staff. The next item was an adoption of a resolution for administrative staff benefits. This works in conjunction with the recently approved Local 150 and 856 Teamsters agreement, a one-year extension, as well as an update to the admin manager and operations manager salary. Again, this is also consistent with the contract negotiations. So those were the 5 items. The board is going to meet again on March 28th. Our March 14th meeting has been canceled. The 28th meeting will be here at Metro Fire Board Chamber at 9 o'clock in the morning. End of report.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, we got Finance and Audit Committee, Director Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance and Audit Committee has not met since we last reported out. Our next meeting will be April 27th at a time to be determined.
Okay. Next on the reports is Policy Committee, Director Costa.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the Policy Committee met today. We had 2 presentations delivered by Melissa Maddox, our HR manager. So one was on the reinstatement policy, and the other was on policy development and the implementation process. Both were informational items, no action taken. And so our next meeting is to be determined. End of report.
Thank you. All right, next we go to board members, questions and comments. We'll start with Director Wood.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Want to start with just announcing that Amazon used to do a program called Amazon Smile, and in it you could designate whatever you bought would go to a certain charity. The Burn Institute, Firefighters Burn Institute, was a member of that. So every time we bought something, they got a portion of our purchases. Amazon canceled that program last month, so just want everyone to keep in mind the Burn Institute and these little passive, easy ways to support them are going away. So keep that in your mind. And we do have events coming up, or the Burn Institute does have events coming up. 6/24 will be the next big one. That's Luau on the Green. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be talking about that every meeting, reminding everyone they need to go because it's a great event and you can't support a better organization in this community. Chief, I want to say thank you for your Friday messages. They're very good, very detailed, and I appreciate you taking a comment that I had basically just made as an aside and actually reporting on it, doing some investigation and reporting on it in regard to the burn, recent ear burn that we had. Yeah. It just seems like we've been hearing a lot of those types of burns, and I appreciate the information that you gave out to us. You looked up and gave out, so thank you. So happy to hear we got an interstation meeting coming up, and I'm thrilled that I'll be able just to ride my bike over to it. It's a great opportunity for us to get out and be a part of the station and have that community be able to be there. So thanks for putting that together. It's a lot of work on staff, I know, but I appreciate getting those back on track. And last, just Melissa, thank you for everything. I appreciate everything you've done over the years. I'd probably have some FPPC filing problems if it weren't for you keeping me on deadline. So I do appreciate all your efforts and wish you all the best. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'll be brief. This board will never be the same. It was mentioned that we're cohesive, and we're cohesive for one reason, and that's the young lady sitting over there in the board clerk's chair. She keeps the wild down, and she is a master at managing multiple personalities, some of which
are multiple, not hers.
Exactly. Not internal, external. But we can't really share with you how much we care for you. And we look forward to one day seeing you again as we hold into perpetuity a position of board clerk. Others may fill it, but those shoes will never be filled as they have been almost a decade now with your leadership. And I, for one, think that this institution is blessing you, but hoping that someday when circumstances change, that you're welcomed back here with open arms and a very competitive salary. And I'll tell every other organization out there, keep your fetching hands off. She's ours. She'll be ours until this agency does one more event, consolidates, whatever the case may be. But we're eternally grateful to you.
Well said. Thank you, Director. Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't follow Director Gould's comments from Melissa anymore, but it has been a pleasure. It's been wonderful. We have each other's numbers, so nobody's going to go hide. Always available, always available. Yeah. And a small correction now. Sorry, Dr. Gould. It's a 15-year pin in about 3.5 hours. So congratulations on the 15 years. Yeah. And when we get together for lunch, we'll each wear our pin. It'll be fun. Thank you, Melissa. All righty. Oh, quick thank you for the tenure pin for Director Wood. Congratulations, congratulations. And several thank yous here. Chief Perryman, thank you so much for the discussion of the MIH program. It sounds wonderful. There's definitely a will, and so it will keep going. Somehow we will find a way. Appreciate all your efforts over these so many years. Also to Aaron Castleberry and Jeff Fry for the CIP program. There's been so many starts and stops and starts, and now it's starting, going. So that's just terrific. Looking forward to all those details as they come about. Please keep up the good work. And Chief Haverty, I'm going to change that to Dr. Haverty. Thank you very much for the presentation and discussion on institutional management and lanes. That's a very good way to put things. I very much appreciate the educational opportunity that you offered to us. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. Director Sanders.
I just want to thank everyone for their presentations, and Melissa, you know how I feel. And I'm gonna just stop there because I have no voice left. So
Thank you, Director. Director Weber.
Right. Thank you, sir. I'd just like to thank Melissa as well. It's been short. But thanks for bringing me up to speed, certainly educating me and doing your very best to keep me in my lane as well. I just wish you the very best and thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Okay, Director Costa.
Thank you. I want to just thank everyone for the presentations tonight. We had a lot of great information and just continues to highlight the great work of the men and women of this organization. Chief, thank you for your presentation. It's important that we level set. Thank you for all of the educational opportunities you've brought to this board. I think it's going to make us a stronger board. And Melissa, and I know it's been short, but thank you for your professionalism, your kindness, and more importantly, your patience. You've been a very big help to me, so thank you.
Thank you, Director. Finally, I want to also congratulate Director Wood on his longevity here. It's been a pleasure, we all, it shows the dedication of this board. We're here to serve, and when you see people, directors hang around them over 10 years and all that that's dedication. I mean, that means you're not trying to run off into another position or anything like that. This is not a staging point, and so thank you for that. Melissa, I can't say enough. I think we've said it, basically said it, how much we love you and how much thank you for your years, your 15 years of service. And I want to thank everyone for their presentations. It's been it's just amazing that this institution, this district that we all work for, and I'm sure that our constituents they're so blessed. They're so blessed with all the work and all the hard work that our men and women put in every day in and day out. Thank you. All I want to say is thank you. And with that, we'll go recess to a closed session and take care of some business and get back out here and everybody go home and hopefully you stay dry. All right, we'll have a report out from our council officer.
Yes, thank you, President Clark. The board met in closed session. Closed session agenda, item number 1, the board considered the workers' compensation claim of employee Robert Radigan. The board unanimously voted to approve settlement authority to its attorney and third-party administrator to effectuate the settlement of Mr. Radigan's workers' compensation claim. Number 2, the board also met in closed session to consider the board clerk selection process. No reportable action was taken. Finally, on that agenda item number 3, the board met in closed session to discuss issues related to the fire chief selection process. The board voted unanimously to take steps to retain the consulting firm of Bob Murray and Associates to assist with the selection and recruitment process for the permanent fire chief for Metro Fire. So that's my report out from the closed session. I'd just like to say I've worked with Melissa Pania for her whole 9 years here on almost a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis. And she's a rock star, that's all.
That's it. Description.
John Walker used the word rock star. Way to go, John.
All right. Having no further business, I adjourn this meeting. The next meeting, regular board meeting, would be March 23rd at 6 p.m. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Deal.
I'm gonna get it. It's been 10 years. I gotta change. I know.